there, y'all. This is Lauren from Mama's Learning Corner. So glad that you've joined us for another week here on Mama's YouTube channel. If you're a regular viewer, then you know that I try to publish a video usually every Sunday or Monday, and it's almost always every week. So you can find me here. Make sure you hit the red subscribe button in YouTube so you don't miss a thing. So today I wanted to talk to you about how I plan my homeschool week. I published a reader survey at the beginning of last week, and wow, I got so much great information back from y'all. And one of the main things that you wanted to hear about was how I plan our homeschool in general, how I start choosing curriculum, how I plan from the beginning of the year, how I plan each week, how I plan, for each child. So this week I wanted to touch on how exactly I plan for the week. In case you're not familiar, I have 4 children. They are 5th grade, 3rd grade, 1st grade, and I have a younger one who's almost 5, but not quite ready for kindergarten, not quite ready to learn to read yet. She's still learning just a few letter sounds. So a very busy house, and certainly a challenge in trying to plan for school. It's hard enough to coordinate one child, much less 4 different children who are on very different levels of learning. So in a different video, I'm going to talk in detail about how I start planning for our homeschool year. That would mean when I choose goals for my children, when I determine which curriculum we're going to use, and then I get at home and I pore over it, and I'm really, really familiar with what we're going to study, just what exactly that particular curriculum has. If it's a new to me curriculum, how I familiarize myself with it. And I have a really good feel for our school subjects in general. That's all done in a separate planning time at the beginning of the year. If you can't tell already, I take planning very seriously. I was quick to find out that the better I am planned, the smoother our homeschool days go. So that is something that my husband and I take very seriously in our home. So the way I start to plan school for the week, like I said, we take it very seriously in our home. Thankfully, I have a husband who understands that planning is essential, and he takes our children to church on Sunday night. They do an Awanas program. He takes them to church on Sunday night for that, and that's when I have quiet, dedicated time here at home to plan. Without him doing that, oh goodness, it would be a disaster trying to wrap my brain around what our week is going to look like schooling 4 little children. I think it's essential for a mom to have time to just really look at her goals for the week and then have time to get those down on paper. So let's talk about the nitty-gritty of how I plan for the week. I have tried multiple online planners. I really have tried like 4 or 5. They are just not a good fit for me. I am much more efficient, and my brain just thinks in terms of writing on a piece of paper. I don't know why that is, but I would love an online planner. I just can't. So I'm stuck back with pencil and paper, which is fine. It really works for me. There's drawbacks, of course, but it works for me. So I'm going to show that to you now, and the beginning steps of how I plan my homeschool week with that particular planner. So I use a planner that I created myself, and I have a comb binding machine that I use just to easily bind it together. And then I have these blank pages that I made for it, and then I fill these in each week. So down the side here is going to go the subject, the week of, September 21st through the 25th, or whatever the current week is we're on. Then I write in the date here. And then up here is the week of Tapestry of Grace that we're on. That just helps me tell at a glance what that's going to look like. So on the left side is a page for my 5th grader. On the right side is a page for my 3rd grader. And then, I have a piece of paper stuck in there. And then the next page over is a page for my 1st grader. So yes, I do have to flip back and forth, but I've tried several methods, and this one definitely works the best for me. Okay, and so this is what a page for my fifth grader looks like that's already completed. In fact, this was back in August, so we've already worked on these. So as you can see, I write his subjects down the side. At the bottom, in a highlight in yellow, any appointments that we have for the week. These just happen to be violin appointments. But, it could be doctor's appointments, eye doctor, dentist, whatever. But this is just a trigger in my brain that this is also going on this day. So I need to be careful when I'm planning that I allot time to make sure this appointment is taken care of. And I do that on both pages. Even though it's double writing, I'm going to forget by the time I get over here and start working on my third grader. So I also just write in marker their names at the top of the pages just so I can keep them straight. So this looks very overwhelming, but honestly, I make it pretty detailed. Like for math, for example, there's a lot of writing in math, but really they're only doing maybe one page. But I also write down the textbook page number, I write down the teacher guide page number, and then I write down their actual assignment. So it's really not nearly as much as it looks like in terms of assignments. For the scripture that we're reading in Bible, I usually just write down whatever scripture that is. Now history is a different story. We use Tapestry of Grace for history, and it's a little bit more involved than, just looking at pages, 5 through 8 in a textbook. So history and science usually take me the longest to plan, and that's why they have the biggest blocks. But I just made this quick little spreadsheet in Microsoft Publisher, which is what I use to make most of my worksheets. So it wasn't a big learning curve. It just took me a few seconds to rip this out. And then I just have a bunch of them printed, and then I just bind them in my little book here. But the way it works is 5th grader, then 3rd grader, and then I flip the page for my 1st grader. And so, like I said, I do have to flip pages, but I'm okay with that. This has definitely worked the best for me. The great thing about the comb binding machine is that you can open these back up and add more pages or remove them as time goes on. I will show you quickly that I have a few blank sheets here in the front when I need to brainstorm various projects. I have this wonderful sheet printed out from Joy at 5J's. It's 5, F-I-V-E, the letter J's.com. And this is how I plan my homeschool weeks. Which weeks we're going to take off, I tentatively plan our writing assignments. I tentatively plan our Tapestry of Grace assignments. This is just kind of a rough draft kind of page. This particular page I created, and you can find it at Mama's Learning Corner. It's a one-page attendance sheet. Latter half of 2015 is on the front, and then 2016 starts on the back through June. And so that is just one place to keep our attendance. It's all right here together. And the brainstorming work that I did when I planned the year can be easily kept in here, which is really nice. Okay, so now I'm going to flip back and tell you step by step what I used to plan. Okay, so this little section is going to be exactly how I plan our week. And to make sure I didn't miss anything, I brought my little piece of paper along. I didn't want to forget to tell you any of the little details. Okay, so after I've printed my schedule, I write in the dates. I add the days that we are not going to do school. We don't go to a co-op this semester, but there are occasional days that we're not going to do school. If we've just gotten back from a big weekend away and everybody's exhausted, I might not do school that Monday, and so then I just make sure I write it on the calendar. If we've got some other project that we're working on, if we've got a field trip that we're going to take the day off from, learning at home type school, that'll be out of the house learning. That's written on my calendar as well. So I'll go ahead and plug in the times that we're not doing school. Then I plug in the times that we have got an appointment, violin lessons, a dentist appointment. I don't know, we're carrying a meal to a family. Like all of those things, I need to make sure on my calendar because we're not going to do big projects on those days. So I always want to take that into consideration. Okay, so here is where my planning is really streamlined. And it's because I prepped so hard at the beginning of the year. My husband had this great idea that I could write down all of our assignments in every single subject for 40 days. And when he first suggested that, I thought, well, why would I do that? Because that just seems silly. It seems like a lot of work to do up front. But that was his point. Do all of this work up front when I had time to plan for the year. And then when it comes time to plan on Sunday afternoon, all I have to do is plug into the slots what we're going to do. Well, I'll tell you, I kind of, rained on his parade a little bit with that idea. But I have grown to love it, and I think it's really smart. Like once I wrapped my head around what that could look like on a weekly basis. So since I type faster than I write, my husband made me an Excel spreadsheet that I listed those 40 days. So, day one is, now it's not dated. It's not dated because I found that when I date assignments, we get behind, and then that makes me feel anxious. And I just don't need that type of guilt in my life. So we did it by day. So day one is this math assignment. Day two is this math assignment. Day three is this math assignment. So that was a really helpful way to do that. I figure out where I am in those 40 days, and then I just start plugging in things on the assignment chart. And it really is simple, and it has totally streamlined the way my Sunday afternoons looked. My Sunday afternoons, I love Sunday. It's my favorite day of the week. But occasionally I dreaded Sunday afternoons. I loved it because I got to be alone, and I'm an introvert, and I really enjoy time alone. But all of my time alone was spent planning school for the week. So this has helped me streamline them, and I'm so grateful for my husband's suggestion. And I will talk more about that specific 40-day planning when I record the video about how I plan for our homeschool year and like what that all encompasses and what that looks like. So I always start with my oldest, and then 5th grade, and then I do him, and then I do my 3rd grader, and then I do my 1st grader. And usually my early kindergartner doesn't require a whole lot of planning because I prepped most of her stuff at the beginning of the year. We're either doing a seasonal activity like apples or pumpkins or something in the spring like a pond life, or we're doing a nursery rhyme, Jack and Jill, Little Miss Muffet. We do one nursery rhyme a week. And she does those type of extra things in addition to handwriting without tears that I do with both her and my 1st grader together, which is another video I cannot wait to show you how I combine them together for that one subject. So my early kindergartner doesn't require much planning at all. But I always start with my oldest because he's the hardest for me to, in terms of academics for me to plan. He just has more on his plate. He's in the 5th grade. He has more responsibility. He has more independent work. So he definitely has more little boxes for me to check off. So I always make sure I get him out of the way first. So here are just some little quick tips that I want to tell you. These are things that I consider when I'm planning for the week. Number one, do I have big projects planned? Now, a big project would mean a field trip, but I've probably already got that settled when I marked off the days that we can't do school. A big project would probably be some type of hands-on activity that we're going to do in history. Like last week, we're studying ancient Egypt, so we made a ziggurat, and that was kind of involved. I was a little bit more involved than I had anticipated. In science, are we doing an experiment that is going to require lots of materials and also lots of time? So I always consider big projects, and then once I know what those projects are, I plug them in on a day that we're going to be home all day. We're not going anywhere. There's no reason to rush out of the house because if we're doing a big hands-on project, it's going to be fun, and I want my kids to enjoy it, and I don't want us to have to rush off to something else and then leave it halfway finished. Another reason I consider big projects is because I need to know, do I have all of the materials for that? It's no fun when 5 minutes before the project and everybody's geared up to do it, and then we're missing something vital and we can't complete it. That's just no fun at all. The next thing I consider when I'm planning is I look ahead to the next couple of weeks. Why? Well, if I do have a big project, I want to make sure I have those things well in advance. Or a science experiment, that would take something that I wouldn't have on hand at home. I want to make sure those things are taken care of. I also look ahead to the next couple of weeks to see if there are books I need to reserve at the library. We use our public library very heavily, and we have a big library system. We're in a large county. So it occasionally takes several weeks to get the books that I need from them. So I need to make sure I reserve those at least 2 weeks in advance. I order a decent amount of our books from Amazon, and we have the Prime shipping, so they usually come in 2 days, but I still need those before Monday morning. So I like to stay at least 2 weeks ahead. mentally, not on paper, but just mentally, I like to stay 2 weeks ahead, especially in terms of history and science and any other themed type activities we're going to do. Like this coming week, we're going to start to research pumpkins with my first grader and my almost kindergartner. So, but that, you know, pumpkin books are in high demand at the library, so I have to make sure I reserved those 2 weeks ago, which I did, thankfully. So it's just being very intentional about making sure that my supplies are available when I need them. Next thing to consider is what materials do I need printed for the week? I cannot tell you the times that we have come downstairs on Monday morning and vital pieces of paper have not been printed for various reasons. Either there wasn't printer ink, or we didn't have enough paper to print what I needed, or I just forgot, which happens occasionally. I try to make myself a note of things to do prior to Monday morning, which is helpful, but sometimes I just don't get to it. So I always make sure, or try to make sure, that the things that need to be printed are printed, because in the heat of the homeschool day, it is so disruptive for me to have to go to the printer, print what we need, and then come back. And by then, my kids are restless and they're not paying attention, and I will have lost that moment when we could have been, you know, learning. And it also makes their attention spans less when they have to wait 10 minutes for me to go print something. You know, it just is an interruption to the day that we don't need. So I make sure those things are printed, and then I put them in a manila envelope. All 4 children have a manila envelope. So for example, if my littlest girl is going to do Jack and Jill for the week, so she's got her little puppet cards, and she's got her coloring book, and she has her little reader, you know, where she can read it to me. And, you know, she has her little hide and seek activity. So all those things are printed, laminated if they need to be, and they are sitting in her manila envelope ready for me just to pick it up, and here we go. Also, for my 5th grader, he has Tapestry of Grace worksheets that need to be printed for literature and for history. Also, writing papers, his Institute of Excellence in Writing papers, that his source text that I need to have printed for both him and my 3rd grader. All those things are in their folders, so hopefully, all I have to do is just go pick it up and say, here you go, aren't we ready? Also, things like notebooking pages if we're doing those for the week. Any type of handout that they are going to need, or worksheet or printable paper, I make sure those are done. It just really streamlines our day. I feel confident that I will think of even more of my little tips and ideas. So I feel fairly confident that there will be a sequel to this video of planning and how I plan our week. And you know, this is just what it looks like in this season of life with a 5th, 3rd, 1st, and almost kindergartner. I have no doubt that this will look completely different in a year or two, because when my oldest child was in 1st and 2nd grade, you know, it looked drastically different than it did now. I didn't spend nearly as much time planning just because the academics weren't as rigorous then. You know, we did phonics and math, and we read good books. So the planning piece wasn't as intense as it is now. I don't know what that's going to look like in a few years. But I do know, as a homeschooling mother, this is my 6th year as a homeschooler, I do know that you just have to be willing to be flexible about what the next season brings. And speaking of being flexible, I want to mention my last tip about planning. I am a notorious over-planner. I know that about myself, and I do it every single week. I don't know why, but I do. I have all these things that I want to do with my children that are really fun, but we just don't get to them all. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day, and I do have 4 children that require a lot of one-on-one interaction. So I already know that I'm going to overplan the week, and so I just have to mentally prepare myself to cross some things off. Now, that is really hard for me because I am certainly a box checker. I'm a to-do list maker. It's not necessarily that I'm type A in that I have to have control over my schedule. I'm not really like that. It's just that there's, you know, I've got a lot of balls in the air, right? As all mothers do. And so it just helps me to keep my mind on being intentional. What do we need to be doing next? So with that said, I know that there's things that we're not going to get to during the week, and I just either push them out to the next week or we just cross them off the list completely. And it's taken me a long time to get to the place where I'm okay with that. But in our 6th year of homeschooling, I'm okay with that. So give yourself grace and don't beat yourself up if you don't get to all those things. Even if you only have 1 or 2 children, where it seems like you should have a lot more time to accomplish those things, all children are different. Maybe your children are really needy and they need more of you in a different way than school. So give yourself grace if you don't accomplish everything on your to-do list. So I would love to know all of your planning tips. Please make sure you leave those in the comments here on YouTube, because it's so interesting as a homeschool mom to look into someone else's homeschool life and see how they do things. I've said this 100 times, but I love looking at how other mothers do things, because there's some bits and pieces I can take away and say, oh, that is going to work so beautifully for us. And, that's kind of how you refine your own homeschool, right? Especially if you're just starting out in the homeschool life. It can be overwhelming and you're not really sure what the next steps are to take. So it's so helpful if you can read what other mothers do. So that's my plea for you to leave your homeschool planning tips and organization tips in the comments here on YouTube. You just never know how you could bless another mother, and that could be the one little thing that makes you go, oh, that would make our day so much better if we just did that. So please share all of your wisdom. Again, you can find me here on YouTube most every week at the beginning of the week. So make sure you subscribe. There's just a red subscribe button in YouTube. You can click it, and then you'll get notifications when I have a new video posted. And in the meantime, I'd love to see you over at Mama's Learning Corner. Tons of printable pages, 400 or more, different activities for your preschooler to 2nd or 3rd-ish grade. Lots of homeschool encouragement, lots of learning activities. And if you have suggestions, I'd love to hear those too. Things that you'd like to see at Mama's Learning Corner, please make sure you leave those too. I'm always willing to, I'm always open to suggestions from readers, because I want Mama's Learning Corner to be a place that you can come and find great ideas and great encouragement in your homeschool life. So thank you so much, and I will see you next week. But in the meantime, visit me at Mama's. It's www.mamaslearningcorner.com.